Mira, just help with the drinks, okay? It's your brother's big day. Don't make it about yourself. I smiled, not because I wanted to, because I had to. Because I'd learned a long time ago that pushing back only made me the difficult one. So there I stood, in the kitchen of the lavish farmhouse my family rented for Armand's wedding, wearing a plain lilac dress they handed me an hour ago. Not even mine. It's just something simple and blendy, as my mother called it, as if I were a part of the wallpaper. My younger cousins giggled down the hallway, their lehengas jingling with every step. Guests flowed in like royalty, gold dripping from their necks, selfies flashing in every corner. And me. I was the shadow carrying trays of drinks, avoiding eye contact, making sure the glasses didn't clink too loud. It wasn't like they hated me. No, that would require acknowledging I existed. They just didn't care. I was the eldest, the non-married one. The one who didn't settle down. The one who, apparently, failed at life. What they didn't know, what none of them cared to ask, was that I had arrived at this wedding after signing a deal with a global tech firm just yesterday. I owned a company. I ran 3 teams. I mentored women in tech, taught coding in rural schools, and had just been featured in Business Asia Weekly. But here, at Armand's wedding, I was the drink girl. You're lucky you're even invited. My aunt whispered when I entered the house yesterday. Your father didn't even want you here. And yet, I brought the fanciest gift, a Rolex, from Dubai, engraved. I placed it in Armand's room, knowing he'd assume it was from one of his banker friends. He wouldn't know it was from me, because they didn't know anything about me anymore. If you've ever been overlooked in your own family, you're not alone. Hit the like button if you've ever played the silent role while others got the spotlight. As I walked through the garden with a silver tray in hand, I saw her, Anaya, the bride, elegant, graceful. Perfect. She was everything I was never called. And yet, she saw me. When our eyes met across the crowd, she smiled. Not the pity kind, the knowing kind. I gave her a small nod and kept walking. You dropped something. Someone hissed behind me. I turned to see a cousin pointing to a napkin that had fallen. Oh, I'd bent to pick it up. He smirked. Careful, don't embarrass us. Us. Funny word. I wanted to say, you have no idea who I am. I wanted to scream it, but I didn't. I just smiled again and carried on. Because power isn't always in proving yourself. Sometimes it's in watching the world underestimate you. Right before the reveal, they had no idea that I was the one who helped Anaya land her first tech internship. That I paid her rent when her father disowned her for choosing her own career. That I connected her to my startup's HR team, where she now led product strategy. To them, I was just Mira, the unmarried, unemployed, always failing older sister. And yet, I was her mentor, her guide, her first boss. And I had a feeling something was coming. Something that would finally turn the tables. The sun dipped lower into the horizon, bathing the garden in warm amber. A violinist began playing a soulful tune. The bride was about to make her entrance. Stay in the back, Mom said. You don't match the theme? Of course I didn't, because their theme was fake perfection, and I was real. I stood behind a curtain, holding a tray, watching my family fawn over each other. The same family who never once asked me why I'd been gone for 2 years, never once texted to ask if I was okay. And yet, here I was, serving them drinks, watching them pretend I didn't exist. Until Anaya took the stage. She was glowing. In her white and gold dress, diamonds glittering at her neck, her confidence unmistakable. Everyone clapped, whistled, cheered, and then she said something no one expected. Before we begin this journey together, there's someone I need to thank. People hushed. Someone who shaped the woman I am today. Someone who stood behind me when I had no one. She is not just a guest here. She's the reason I'm standing here with strength. I froze. Myra Khan, please come forward. Heads turned. So did mine. Surely there had to be another Myra. But no. Her eyes locked with mine, smiling. She's not just my mentor, she's my CEO, the founder of LoomTech, and the woman who believed in me before I believed in myself. The tray in my hands felt weightless now. For a moment, I didn't move. Then, the crowd parted and I walked forward. I walked to the stage with what felt like 1,000 eyes piercing through me. But I didn't walk with shame. No, I walked with 27 months of sleepless nights, 12 failed pitches, 3 rejections from investors, who laughed when I showed up in Shalwar camise and flats, and one unshakable belief that one day I'd build something on my own terms. Now here, I was in the middle of my brother's wedding, being called CEO for the first time, out loud, in front of my entire family. As I stepped onto the stage, Anaya took my hand and whispered, "You deserve more than they ever gave you." And just like that, I smiled. Not the forced kind, a real one. For the first time in years, the crowd clapped, but the applause was fragmented. Confused, I could feel the disbelief radiating from every corner of the garden. Auntie Yasmin looked like she'd swallowed a chili. My cousin Rafi's mouth hung open, and my mother, she didn't even clap. Just stared, stunned, as if the tray girl had suddenly become royalty. "Say something," Anaya nudged. I took a breath. The mic was in front of me. For once, they would listen. Thank you. For this moment, I wasn't expecting to be seen tonight, but maybe it's time I stopped hiding behind the curtain. There was a murmur in the crowd. 2 years ago, I left home quietly because I felt like a burden, like I didn't fit into the mold my family had created. So I wasn't married. I wasn't the daughter they celebrated. So I left to build something of my own. A pin could drop. And I did. I built a company. I hired 60 women from rural areas. We trained them in tech, coding, finance. We changed lives. And I never said a word about it to anyone here, 'cause no one ever asked. Silence. But Anaya did. She saw me. She believed in me not as her future sister-in-law, but as a woman who refused to settle for being unseen. I paused, looking straight at my father. He looked down. "Today, I want to thank the only person here who treated me like I mattered, Anaya. This is your day. But you gave me something I didn't think I'd ever get from this family. Dignity. If you've ever had to prove your worth to people who never believed in you, hit that subscribe button. Let's rewrite the story together." I stepped off the stage, heart thundering. My mother rushed toward me. "Why would you say all that in public?" she hissed. "You embarrassed your brother." I laughed softly. "You're worried about embarrassment. Try invisibility." She blinked, speechless, and for once, didn't back down. Later that night, as the guests enjoyed dessert and the music rose again, a quiet tap on my shoulder startled me. It was my father. We hadn't spoken in over a year. "Walk with me," he said. I followed him toward the empty side of the garden, where fairy lights blinked like tiny witnesses in the dark. He didn't speak for a while. Then, "Why didn't you tell me about the company?" I folded my arms. "You never asked. You only ever asked when I'd get married." He nodded slowly. "That was wrong." That stunned me. I just didn't know how to understand you. You were always different, strong, unbending, and that scared me. I took a shaky breath. I wasn't trying to be difficult. I just wanted to be respected, not for getting married, but for being me. He looked at me, really looked for the first time in years. I'm sorry I swallowed hard. I had imagined this moment so many times, and now that it was here, it felt too late. Or maybe just late enough. "I was proud of you tonight," he said quietly, "even if it hurt a little." I smiled. Pride shouldn't hurt, Dad. It should lift. Back inside, the wedding slowly began to wind down. Cousins took selfies. Kids ran around in chaos. My brother never once said thank you, but that was okay. I didn't need his applause. Anaya came over and hugged me. "You started something today," she whispered. "I think you did," I replied. That night, as I took off the lilac dress and looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't see the girl they ignored anymore. I saw a woman who stepped out of the shadows and stood tall, too. Weeks had passed since the wedding, and not a single message from my brother. Not a thank you. Not a sorry. Nothing. But somehow I didn't care. That night wasn't about closure from them. It was about opening a door for myself. Still, part of me ached for a connection I never had, especially with him. So when my phone buzzed with an unknown number and the message read, "Dinner at 8. Family's asking for you. Come if you're free." Anaya. My heart skipped. Family. Asking for me. I almost didn't go. My curiosity and maybe something deeper, hope, pulled me in when I reached. The lights were warm, the table was full, and for once my seat wasn't left empty. I was about to walk in quietly when Anaya met me at the door. "You okay?" she asked gently. "Depends. Am I walking into an ambush?" She smiled. "No, a soft landing." Inside, my parents were already seated. Father nodded politely. My mother? Well, her nod was slower, more hesitant, but it was a nod. My brother was at the head of the table. I took the seat opposite him. Dinner began in silence, broken by the clinking of spoons and the occasional awkward cough. I focused on the food. At least that hadn't changed. Biryani, kebabs, and salan. All familiar, all nostalgic. Then my brother cleared his throat. "So, you really built a company?" His tone wasn't mocking, just curious. I looked up. "Yes, it wasn't easy. I Googled it," he admitted. "You were in Forbes Women to Watch." I nodded slowly. "Last year." He chuckled awkwardly. "Wow, I didn't know." "You never asked," I replied calmly. "I know." That silence again. Then, "I'm sorry." It's 2 words. They were small, but they felt massive. "I didn't stand up for you," he added. "Not when Dad shut you down. Not when Mom said those things." I was so caught up in what I was supposed to do, I never realized you were doing something extraordinary. I stared at him. I didn't want to cry, but a part of me, that abandoned little sister inside, wanted to crumble. "I didn't want extraordinary," I said softly. "I just wanted to matter." If you've ever waited years just to hear 2 words, I'm sorry. If you have, hit that subscribe button. This story's not just mine, it's ours. After dinner, we sat in the lounge sipping chai. The tension had melted, not gone, but softened. My mother finally spoke. "You looked beautiful that night," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "I'm serious," she said. "I'm brave." I was angry, yes, but not because of what you said. Because I didn't say it first. That stopped me cold. "I don't know how to be the mother you needed," she whispered. "But I want to try now." I looked at her, stunned. Maybe healing doesn't arrive like a wave. Maybe it shows up in whispers. In tea-stained cups and late-night truths. Maybe it's slow, but real. I reached out and held her hand. "I never wanted to fight you," I said. "I just wanted you to see me." That night, as I drove back to my apartment, my home, I didn't feel like the invisible girl anymore. I felt like a woman who had been through fire and didn't burn. She forged herself. I rolled down the window, the wind on my set. Face was crisp, clean. Freedom has a taste, and I was finally learning how to savor it. If you've ever sat through an awkward dinner and walked away with peace, even just a little, leave A in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. The next chapter is where things truly begin. A week had passed since that dinner. It was surreal. For the first time in years, my mother sent me a forwarded quote in the family group chat, the kind with the sunrise background and a cheesy line like "Family is where life begins and love never ends." Normally, I'd roll my eyes, but this time, I smiled. Even my father, who rarely messaged anyone, dropped a simple "good morning" the next day. No punctuation, no emojis. But it meant more than I could ever explain. For the first time, in a long, long time, I felt included, until I didn't. One night, I opened the group chat late, expecting the usual forwards and greetings. But I noticed the messages were piling up, dozens of them. I scrolled up and my heart sank. My name wasn't tagged, but I was the subject. A message from my uncle read, "She thinks just because she made some money, she's above us now." Another cousin chimed in, "Exactly. Where was all this confidence when she was begging Auntie for a tuition loan?" Then, one from my own aunt. "I still remember when her shoes had holes. Money doesn't buy class." My chest tightened. My palms turned cold. I kept scrolling. I wonder if she even belongs at family events anymore. Her tone at the wedding was disrespectful. Even if she's successful now, she forgot her place. That word place hit like a slap. I had fought my whole life to make a place, and now that I had, they wanted to take it away. The final message broke me. From my brother, "Guys, calm down. I'm handling her. Don't worry." Handling me? Like I was a problem. I closed the chat and I cried. Not the quiet, controlled kind of cry I had mastered all these years. This one came from my gut, ugly, raw, loud. I cried for every time I thought I was finally seen, for every time I believed they changed, for every time I gave second chances to people who gave me first betrayals. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. This time it was from Anaya. "Please don't shut down. I know what you saw." I didn't say anything in the group, but I didn't defend you either. "That's on me. I'm sorry." I didn't reply. I just stared at the message until it blurred through my tears again. Then I got up, showered, put on my best power suit, and drove. Not to work, not to cry in a cafe, but to the bank. Have you ever found out your own family talks behind your back, but you chose to rise anyway? Hit that subscribe button. This story's not over. Not even close. By noon, I was sitting in a sleek boardroom across from two advisors. "Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" one of them asked. Eyebrows raised. "I've never been more sure," I said. "You see, months ago, before the wedding, before the dinner, before the chat, I'd quietly bought out the mortgage to my parents' home. They didn't know. They were struggling financially. And I paid off their remaining balance under a trust anonymously. But now I had one condition: transfer the property to their name. Full ownership, I instructed. The younger advisor blinked. You're giving them the house." "Yes, but I don't want strings attached anymore," I said. "Want to free them, but more importantly, want to free myself." That evening, I walked into my apartment and opened the family group chat one last time. I typed, "Hey, I saw everything. And I heard your words, loud and clear. You want me to remember where I came from? Fine. I came from silence, from being overlooked, from being laughed at. And I used every bit of that pain to build something powerful." I paused, typed again. "So don't worry. You won't need to handle me anymore. The house is yours now, free and clear. No thanks necessary. Not staying in the group, not out of anger, but because I finally love myself enough to stop chasing people who only clap when I'm silent." Then I hit send, and left the group for the first time in forever. My phone was quiet, and I loved it. I sat on the balcony, tea in hand, and watched the sun dip into the skyline. My city, my peace. I didn't need their validation anymore. I didn't need permission to exist. I existed. I thrived, not because they believed in me, but because I believed in me. And that was enough. They say silence is golden, but mine was platinum. After I left the family group chat, something strange happened. No one called, no one texted, no how could you? No, let's talk. Just silence. And for the first time, it didn't hurt. It felt like walking out of a room where everyone whispered behind your back and slamming the door behind you. I poured myself into work, not just to distract myself, but to finally build the empire I used to dream about while eating instant noodles in a tiny studio apartment. Every pitch I gave, stronger. Every deal I closed, sharper. And every time I looked in the mirror, saw a woman who had crawled through broken glass and come out glowing. I hired a stylist, not because I needed to impress anyone, but because I wanted my outside to finally match the strength I felt inside. Power suits, red lips, confidence. I became the woman younger me used to stare at and whisper one day. Then, one morning, my assistant knocked on my office door. "You have a visitor," she said, hesitating. "It's your brother." My chest tightened. I hadn't seen him since the chat, since his message. "Don't worry, I'm handling her." "Send him in," I said, my voice cool. He walked in, head down, hands in his pockets. No usual swagger. I was in the area. He mumbled, "Thought I'd drop by." "Really?" I leaned back in my chair. Didn't know family visits counted as handling now? He winced. "Look, I messed up," he said. "I didn't mean it the way it sounded. Everyone was talking about me." I finished, "Yeah, I saw." He sighed and looked at me, really looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time in years. "You're different," he said quietly. "Stronger, I had to be," I replied. When no one else was strong for me, he sat down across from me. "You scared them, you know," he said after a moment. I raised a brow. "By succeeding," he nodded. "They don't know what to do with a version of you they can't control. You were supposed to stay small, needy, quiet. They don't like that you don't ask for approval anymore." I laughed bitterly. Approval from people who couldn't even clap for me without gossiping behind my back. He stayed silent, then said, "They talk about you more now. Still gossiping?" "No," he shook his head. "More like wondering what? If they were wrong. If they should have treated you better." My throat tightened. I didn't reply, because hearing that, even from someone who hurt me, still felt like balm on a wound I pretend it had. Healed. That night, I opened an old notebook, the one I used in college, the one with dreams scribbled on every page. Tear stains between lines. One page stood out. "One day I'll be the woman no one can ignore, even the ones who tried to forget me." I smiled, not because it was dramatic, though it was, but because it was true. I had become her. The next weekend, I hosted a dinner, not for my family, but for the people who chose me. My assistant, my mentor, my college roommate who once lent me money without asking for it back, my neighbor who brought me food when I worked late. We raised our glasses in my new apartment, floor to ceiling windows, views of the skyline, to healing. I said, to choosing peace, someone added, to glowing up in silence and letting them wonder. Another laughed. And for the first time, I wasn't proving myself to anyone. I was just living. Later that night, I got a message from my mother, just 5 words. "Your father is proud too." No emoji, no explanations. But I knew how much those words cost him to type. And I smiled, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about arrival. I had arrived. I used to dream of this day. The day they'd have to sit in the audience and watch me shine. Not just hear about it from a relative, not catch glimpses on social media, but witness it, up close. Turns out, that day came wrapped in velvet invitations and gold trim. An award gala, not just any gala, one that celebrated women in business, community, and resilience. And I was one of the honorees. When the email came, I read it 3 times to be sure. "Dear Ms., you've been selected for the Rising Impact Award." My heart raced, not because I didn't think I deserved it, but because I had spent years thinking I had to be invisible to stay loved. Now, I was being celebrated for all the things I used to hide. My ambition, my voice, my fight. It wasn't going to tell my parents. Not at first. I told myself, they don't deserve to be part of this. But something in me, some small, unhealed thread whispered maybe this time will be different. So, I mailed the invitation, didn't follow up, didn't ask if they were coming, if they showed up. They did. If not, well, I'd still stand tall on that stage. The night of the gala, my stylist came early. Big night. She grinned. Are you ready to knock them dead? I'm not here to knock them dead, I said, staring at my reflection. I'm here to show the little girl in me that we made it. The ballroom was glittering dot crystals, candles, music soft like a heartbeat. I took my seat at a table near the front. My team was with me, every person who had been in my corner. When I was on the floor crying, then I saw them knight my parents, walking in slowly, my mother clutching her purse like it was a shield. My father straightening his tie nervously. I caught their eyes, and for a moment, we just stared. Then I nodded, and they nodded back when my name was called. I walked to the stage slowly, not out of fear, but because I wanted to feel every step, every moment, every heartbeat. I held the mic with hands that once trembled over job interviews and rejection letters. Years ago, someone close to me told me I was too sensitive, that I took things too personally, that I should stop trying so hard. I looked around the room. I used to believe them, murmurs, a few nods, but then I realized those weren't flaws, they were seeds. And I've spent years watering them in silence. Tonight I stand here, not in spite of my sensitivity, but because of it. A pause. Not because I stopped trying, but because I never gave up. Applause. And in the back I saw my father wiping his eyes. My mother was already dabbing hers. After the ceremony, they approached. Congratulations, my mother said first, her voice tight but sincere. My father cleared his throat. We were wrong. That was all he said, but I heard the rest. Though we should have believed in you. Though we didn't see it then. Though we see it now, later. While I stood near the balcony sipping champagne, my friend nudged me. You okay? I smiled. I'm more than okay. Feels good, huh? Better than I imagined because they showed up. I looked at her. No, because I showed up fully. Finally, when I got home, I placed the award on a shelf next to that old notebook I couldn't throw away, the one filled with messy handwriting and broken dreams. I smiled at it because even back then, I knew I'd make it. It just took time to become the woman who believed it too. It had been weeks since the gala. Weeks since my parents sat front row and watched me claim an award they'd never thought I'd deserve. They hadn't said much since. Just a few texts. A, we're proud of you here. A, you've come a long way there. But we all knew what was coming. That one. Conversation. The one we had avoided my whole life. The one where we'd have to talk about everything they did and everything I endured silently. They invited me over just like that. No birthday, no celebration, just, can you come for dinner? At first I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was ready to sit in the house where so many of my dreams were dismissed before they were even born. But something in me whispered, you're not the same girl who used to shrink at that table. So I went. The house hadn't changed. Same photos on the wall. Same tea-stained carpet in the hallway. But I had when I walked through the door. I walked like someone who knew her worth now. My mom smiled nervously. You look beautiful. Thank you, I said, setting down my bag. My dad stood awkwardly by the kitchen counter. We made your favorite chicken curry. I nodded. We ate in silence at first, forks against plates, the sound of old memories echoing in the spaces between us. Finally, my father set down his spoon. I owe you something, he said, his voice lower than I'd ever heard it. I looked up. My apology. My mother's hands trembled. I didn't protect you the way a father should. I didn't support you when you needed it most. I failed you. The words didn't hit like fireworks. They landed like slow rain on dry earth. Quiet, steady, real. My mom spoke next. I thought I was helping by being hard on you, she said, voice cracking. I didn't realize I was breaking you instead. I didn't cry. I didn't even speak right away because I wanted to be sure this was real, not just guilt, not just performance. But after a moment, I exhaled. Thank you for saying that. Can you ever forgive us? My father asked. I looked at them, two people who had made me feel like nothing for so long. Now searching my eyes for redemption, I already did, I said. Not for you, for me. They looked stunned. I forgave you the day I stopped needing your approval, because I couldn't move forward carrying your shame and mine. Silence. Then my mom's voice, barely above a whisper. We don't expect you to forget. I won't, I said, but I won't let it define me anymore either. Have you ever forgiven someone, not for their sake, but to set yourself free? Drop a I forgave to heal in the comments. And hit that subscribe. The final chapter is coming, and you don't want to miss it. Before I left, my dad walked me to the door. I know we can't fix the past, he said. But we'd like to try to be part of your future, if you'll let us. I nodded. Start. Small, I said. Just be honest. Be human. That night, I didn't go home and cry like I used to. I lit a candle. I ran a bath. I played music that reminded me of soft beginnings. And I whispered to myself, you did it. You didn't just survive, you rebuilt. You rose, and you walked back into the fire not to get burned again, but to prove that the flames no longer scared. Forgiveness didn't feel like fireworks or peace doves. It felt like silence. Silence that didn't ache anymore, just calm. And in that calm, I realized this wasn't about whether they ever changed. It was about me finally changing. Enough to not need them to. If this chapter hit close to home, you're not alone. Healing takes time and power. Drop I set myself free in the comments and hit that subscribe. Chapter 8 is where peace becomes purpose. It's funny how, after years of chasing approval, the only validation that truly mattered came. From within, my name is now recognized, my story is known. My face, once hidden in the shadows of shame, now stands in the spotlight of survival. But that's not what changed my life. What changed everything. It's peace, not the loud kind, the still kind. The kind that whispers, you're finally safe now. Year passed. 1 year since that dinner at my parents' house, since I forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because I refused to carry their guilt anymore. 1 year since I fully embraced the woman I had become. Brave, bold, broken in places, but beautifully whole again. I didn't just rise. I stayed risen. I began speaking at schools. It started with one invite. A teacher who had seen my viral speech and asked me to talk to a group of teenage girls. I almost said no, but then I saw myself in their eyes. The girl who had once sat in the back of the class, afraid to speak her truth, so I went, and I spoke. Not like a preacher, not like a motivational guru, just like a girl who had walked through the fire and made it out the other side. I told them how I was called unmarriageable, how I believed it, how I watched my dreams die quietly under the weight of what will people say, and how I buried my tears so deep. I forgot they were even mine, but I also told them how I came back to life. One decision at a time, one act of courage at a time, one I matter at a time. A girl in the front row cried. She hugged me afterward and whispered, "You said everything I was too scared to admit." That night, I knew this was bigger than me now. Have you ever felt like your pain was preparing you to help someone else? Comment, I turned pain into purpose, and hit that subscribe. Your journey might be someone else's map. I launched a podcast. It wasn't fancy, just a mic. My voice and raw, unfiltered stories. Stories of women who were labeled too much, too loud, too emotional, too unmarriageable. They came to speak not just about their survival, but about how they now thrive. We laughed. We cried. We healed out loud, and people listened. Because truth, when spoken with love, always finds its way home. My parents. They're part of my life now in a different way. They don't pretend the past didn't happen. They ask questions. Now they listen. They don't always get it right, but they try. And that's enough for me. Sometimes love isn't about getting back what you lost. Sometimes it's about starting from where you are and building something better. One evening, As I stood backstage before speaking to a crowd of over 1,000 people, I looked down at my speech, the title, Unmarriageable. Watch me build an empire. I smiled, because that word, that curse they tried to wrap around my future, had become my brand, my power, my rebellion. They called me unmarriageable. I became unforgettable. I no longer chase a ring. I chase peace. I chase passion. I chase purpose. And one day, if love finds me, I'll meet it not from a place of emptiness, but from overflow. Because I know now I don't need someone to choose me. I already did. If you've ever been called something that made you feel small, let this be your reminder. You are not their label. You are your light. Drop AI chose me in the comments and hit that subscribe. Your story is just beginning.